An average of $21.5 million every single day is being funneled from the people to the makers of the RT-PCR test, and that's just here in America. Can you say, follow the money? People ask how an old codger like me stays in shape. The fact is, 80% of being healthy is what you cram or don't cram into your pie hole. You've probably already heard of the ketogenic or keto diet. To sum it up, it's a high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb diet that forces your body to burn fat rather than the glucose or simple sugars that so many people are addicted to. The bottom line is, this kind of diet works. And I use Keto Elevate because it's specifically designed to help quickly and efficiently raise your ketone levels so you can reap the major benefits of the keto diet lifestyle. And guys, this isn't just an ad. This stuff really works. Use my link in the description, ketowithflix.com, and get 51% off while supplies last. Somebody sent me this link, and I was reading a couple paragraphs from that. This comes from the Bulgarian Pathology Association. Let me pull this down right here so you can see it. Bulgarian Pathology Association. Listen to what they say about Kary Mullis's RT-PCR test. PCR test is the polymerase chain reaction test, and that is the predominant test that they're using right now to tell if you are a confirmed case of convid. I like convid. If you guys think of another word, I like convid. We can think of another word. I don't want to use COVID anymore. Though the whole world relies on RT-PCR to diagnose SARS-CoV-2 infection, the science is clear. They are not fit for purpose. Lockdowns and hygienic measures around the world are based on numbers of cases and mortality rates created by the so-called SARS-CoV-2 RT-PCR tests used to identify positive patients, whereby positive is usually equated with infected. But looking closely at the facts, the conclusion is that these PCR tests are meaningless. Now again, if this comes up on YouTube, I'm not saying this. This comes from the Bulgarian Pathology Association. You can see it right there. Bulgarian Pathology Association, YouTube. So please, cool your jets. Looking closely at the facts, the conclusion is that these PCR tests, that's the polymerase chain reaction test, are meaningless as a diagnostic tool to determine alleged infection by a supposedly new virus called SARS-CoV-2. Check that out. Are meaningless as a diagnostic tool. Unfounded test mantra. Check this out. They start ripping apart the WHO. At the meeting briefing on CV-19 COVID on March 16, 2020, the WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus said, "We have a simple message for all countries. Test, test, test." Remember, that's the exact same thing Nancy Pelosi said. She said test, test, test. I have a compilation of these. Fauci said test, test, test. Donald Trump was saying test, test, test. Members of Congress were saying test, test, test. We got to get these tests out. James Bullard from the Federal Reserve said not only test, 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 but he said every time you go to work, you need to submit yourself to a test so that we know you're not positive for that day that you can show up to work. We're going to cut off your pay. So not only are they talking about tests, they're talking about, James Bullard is talking about a daily test for each and every person. Follow the money. Keep bono. Who benefits? Who's going to benefit from that? Who's making these tests? Cha-ching, cha-ching. The CARES Act allotted $13.9 to $41.5 billion just for testing. Each test costs like $43 to $52 depending where you get it. And it's covered by Medicare. That's a lot of money, guys. Think about it. They're talking about over in this article right here. No, it wasn't this article. There's another article where it was saying that they were up to, yeah, here we go. The U.S. is currently testing about 500,000 people a day. 500,000 people times 43 or $52? 500,000 times 43 per day? And it's sanctioned by the government? Oh my gosh, where do I sign? Can I produce some of these tests too? These highly inaccurate tests that mainstream media is constantly putting on the Johns Hopkins University Fear Porn Death Map leaderboard? Oh boy, somebody's making a lot of money. The message was spread through headlines around the world, for instance, in Reuters and the BBC. I'll go ahead and click on some of these links. Look, here's Reuters. Test, test, test. World Health Organization chief's coronavirus message to the world. That's Reuters. This is the BBC. World Health Organization head, our key message is test, test, test. Let's just hear him say it. You know how many times they've said it?
We have a simple message for
Simple.
all countries.
Simple message.
Test, test, test. Test every suspected case. If they test positive, isolate them and find out who they have been in close contact with up.
Stick your nose in their business. If they test positive, isolate them. How about this? House arrest. How about false imprisonment? Commit false imprisonment against them if they test positive.
2 days before they developed symptoms and test those people too. Every day, more tests are being produced to meet the global demand.
Guess what? There is no based on propaganda. Thank you, CNN.
WHO has shipped almost 1.5 million tests to 120 countries. We're working with companies to increase the availability of tests for those most in need.
And if you check this out over here on the side, this is March 16th. Oh, they've improved their game greatly if they're up to 500,000 tests a day. And I think I saw a figure it's closer to 750,000 tests a day. So back to this Bulgarian pathology site. They said the message was spread throughout the headlines. Still, on the 3rd of May, the moderator of the Hoyt Journal, one of the most important news magazines on German television, was passing the mantra of the corona dogma onto his audience with the admonishing words, test, test, test. That is the credo at the moment and is the only way to really understand how much the coronavirus is spreading. And we saw on CNN yesterday, can't open up without the test, can't go back to work without the test. Can't go back to your businesses and start making money so that you can put food on the table until you get a test.
Testing enables reopening. Testing enables rehiring. Testing enables recovery.
And this is the same mantra, guys, that they're using for the masks. It's the same mantra that they're going to use for, oh, you got your CV-19 vaccination certification? Oh, then you can't fly. Then you can't travel. You can't take the cruise ship. You can't go out on the freeways. You can't shop in the grocery stores. It's coming. It's coming to even a small town near you. It's happening in the big towns. It's going to spill over to the small towns. This indicates that the belief in the validity of the PCR test is so strong that it equals a religion that tolerates virtually no contradiction. I love that. I'm going to read that again. This indicates that the belief in the validity of the PCR test is so strong that it equals a religion that tolerates virtually no contradiction. And that's why every time you turn on CNN or any fake news network, they're constantly showing that John Hopkins fear porn death map number in the upper right hand corner of your screen, constantly reminding you this is how many confirmed cases we have. And how are those confirmed? Through the RT-PCR test. You know what Carrie Mullis said about that. But it's well known that religions are about faith and not about scientific facts, as Walter Lippmann, the 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner and perhaps the most influential journalist of the 20th century, said, where all think alike, no one thinks very much. So to start, it's very remarkable that Carrie Mullis himself, the inventor of the polymerase chain reaction technology, did not think alike. His invention got him the Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1993. Unfortunately, Mullis passed away last year at the age of 74. I wish he was still alive. Wouldn't that be great if Carrie Mullis was still alive? Makes you wonder if something happened to him. Maybe he encountered the Clintons. Maybe that's why he's not with us anymore. Maybe he suicided himself. But there is no doubt that the biochemist regarded the PCR test as inappropriate to detect a viral infection. I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. The reason is that the intended use of the PCR was and still is to apply it as a manufacturing technique, being able to replicate DNA sequences millions and billions of times, and not as a diagnostic tool to detect viruses. How declaring virus pandemics based on the PCR test can end in disaster was described by Gina Kolata in her 2007 New York Times article, Faith in Quick Tests Leads to Epidemic That Wasn't. Wow, really? The New York Times published that? Lack of a valid gold standard. When we talked about the gold standard of Koch's postulate, some people call it Koch's postulate. Moreover, it's worth mentioning that the PCR test used to identify so-called COVID-19 patients presumably infected with what's called SARS-CoV do not have a valid gold standard to compare them with. This is a fundamental point. Tests need to be evaluated to determine their... Remember, this isn't me talking, okay, guys? This is not me talking. This is the Bulgarian Pathology Association. I just want to make that clear right now. This is coming from a bunch of doctors, not me. It's a fundamental point. Tests need to be evaluated to determine their preciseness, strictly speaking, their sensitivity and specificity, by comparison with the gold standard, meaning the most accurate method available. As an example, for a pregnancy test, the gold standard would be the pregnancy itself. But as Australian infectious disease specialist, this guy right here, stated in an ABC TV interview in an answer to the question, how accurate is the CV-19 testing? He said, if we had a new test for picking up the bacterium gold staph in blood, we've already got blood cultures. That's our gold standard. We've been using it for decades, and we can match this new test against that. But for CV-19, we don't have a gold standard test. Have not seen this ABC interview. I hope this is an actual video where we can see it from this guy's own mouth.
Now, every week we've been putting your questions to an expert panel. This week we're joined by our national medical reporter Sophie Scott and Dr. Sanjaya Senanayake, an infectious diseases expert at the Australian National University. Dr. Senanayake, question received via the ABC News website. How accurate is the current testing?
That's a hard one to know, Jeremy, because there's no gold standard to really compare this to. So if we had a new test for picking up golden staph in blood, we've already got blood cultures. That's our gold standard we've been using for decades, and we could match this new test against that. But for COVID-19, we don't have a gold standard test. So the current test we are using, the PCR test, where we put a swab in the throat and in the back of the nose, they're our gold standard. But trying to work around that, we think that it's probably picking up about 70% of cases.
Now
I don't even know how you could say that. If you don't have a gold standard, how could you pick up any cases? Not even 0.7%. If there's no gold standard, you don't know what you're looking for to compare it to. And that was an ABC News interview. That'd be a good thing just to play as an isolated little blurb on YouTube and just put it out there as a standalone video. So these guys are saying that there's no gold standard to test for it, and that the RT-PCR test is being used in a way that wasn't intended by its creator, Terry Mullis. And we've been saying that all along, guys.
We've seen some crazy crap happen in the past month that we never thought would happen in the United States of America. People fighting over toilet paper and disinfectant sprays, reports coming in from all over the place of empty store shelves, no meat, no chicken, no eggs, the rice is gone. The last thing you want to do is be at a store fighting over food with the rest of the lemmings. But you can sidestep all that by going to my website, preparewithhighimpactflix.com, where you can pick up a couple months worth of delicious, nutritious, 2,000 calorie a day food that can store for up to 25 years. The site is preparewithhighimpactflix.com, and I'll throw that in the description and in the pinned comment for you. Never underestimate the power of stupid people in large crowds. It's better to have a food supply and not need it than to need it and not have it.